So we have this group called the Lords. And so if the Lords from the Lords of Salem, they gave you a cursed vinyl and you played it and it summoned the you from your past life, so the you from your past life is coming to get you, what version of you do you think would show up, and do you think it would be a friendly version or an evil version?
My goodness. I guess it would depend on what their plans for a current version of me would be. What would they want from me? If they were just trying to summon an old version to destroy me, to destroy my family line, they would just find me when I was at my lowest and weakest. If they wanted me at my best, I don't know, probably somewhere in my 30s, doing a little bit better physically, and I don't know. It'd be interesting. It'd depend on what is in that line, on what their exact, I don't know, like goal of it all was.
Makes sense. Very fair. Fair diplomatic answer.
Yeah.
And hello to everybody out there. How you doing? It is I, Brandy, otherwise known as the Terrorific Lady, and welcome to Retro Horror School Talks, where I drag guests on, kicking and screaming, and sometimes against their will, to gush about and talk about what else? Retro horror. And with me, I have a fellow horror brain, fellow horror creator, someone I have collaborated with in the past, and whose content is just pretty freaking awesome. CaturdayNite. So, welcome here for the first time to Retro Horror School Talks.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Scott. I also go by CaturdayNite online. And as Brandy said, we worked, I guess it's about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and we did a video about The Thing, the remake / prequel versus the original, differences between the two, what works, what didn't, our personal opinions about those. On my channel, what I basically focus on, although I started, as you see some of the older videos, I have like letter rankings and everything, I kind of got away from that review side and got more towards simply saying, here's a movie I liked, for these reasons, maybe you will too. There are some cases where I might go a tad bit negative if I'm reviewing an entire franchise or a boxed set. There's bound to be some films in that I don't care for, but even then, it may just not be my cup of tea, so I'll still find something positive to say about it. But yeah, so I've been doing that for about 4 years.
So the idea is just like, there's enough negativity in the world, let me try and put something positive into it.
And also, I don't want to spend 2 hours putting together something for a film that I didn't enjoy to have to watch any of that film anymore. It's just not my thing,
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And I am assuming that you like this movie, otherwise you wouldn't have picked it to talk about today. And it's
Exactly.
and it's a first time watch, like for me. I just watched it for the first time last night, and it is a Rob Zombie film. We're talking about the Lords of Salem today, and it came out in 2012, so 13 years ago. We've got a bit of a funky film here. It's got like really kind of weird, freaky, dreamlike, hypnotic visuals. There's just this tone of dread that permeates throughout the entire film. And it's got this interesting take on witchcraft. Not these like polished kind of witches. It's these really just kind of dark, evil, nasty like kind of
They are dirty. They are dirty for sure.
They are dirty, yes. They need to take a bath.
Definitely.
Let's go ahead and just dive right into the Lords of Salem. And this is a question that I always really love to start out with, because I love to ask people if they can remember the first time that they've seen the particular horror movies. Do you remember the first time that you watched Lords of Salem, and what in particular stood out to you about this movie?
Well, this is one that I'd always heard negative things about over the years, so I'd kind of just put off ever watching it. I think I might have even gotten the title mixed up with Lords of Dogtown or something. But anyways, I was at it was either at like a flea market or at a place that sells used movies. Like here in Tampa, we have Sound Exchange and Viper Video being like the two big ones. And I came across the Blu-ray, and it was used, and I figured at the time it wasn't on the streaming platform that I had. So I may as well scoop it up and give it a shot, and hoping that I would enjoy it and that my, I think it was $4 would have been worth it. And I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I did really enjoy it the first time. There were some parts of it that were a little bit slow and everything, but I also wanted to make sure a few months later to watch it again to make sure that my opinion hadn't changed. Because if somebody really has been bashing a movie down, setting the expectation really, really low, and then it's just a so-so movie, that so-so ends up feeling absolutely great compared to all the trash people were talking. But I mean, I ended up, like I said, the only negative thing that I could think about it first off was that it was a little bit slow, but I really took to that creepy feel. I always felt it had a real like 70s throwback kind of feel to it that I saw in some of the stuff from when I covered a bunch of Hammer films from my channel. I did a lot from the 70s, 60s, and a couple from the 50s. And even the way that the music was very creepy and droning and slow, punctuated with these little pops of rock throughout it. But yeah, it was, I actually ended up really enjoying it and was trying to find out what is it that people were really trash talking it about? Was it just because they wanted House of a Thousand Corpses, something that's more wild and crazy and almost a caricature of horror, and they weren't expecting this? But for me, I really took to it and loved it.
Yeah, I think probably for me digging into it, a lot of the complaints about this centered on expectations. Because for anybody out there who doesn't know Rob Zombie, that House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, Three from Hell, he's very out there. His films are wild, over the top, gore fest. Masterpieces. Like, I'm just gonna say it straight out, masterpieces. Yeah. If you're a gorehound, they're gonna hit with you. Lords of Salem was very different. It it had some kind of instances of gore, but if I didn't know it was directed by Rob Zombie, I wouldn't have pegged this for a zombie film. Like, right. At all.
Yeah, definitely. It didn't feel, and that was one of the issues that I had way back with Devil's Rejects. Even that one felt so different from House of a Thousand Corpses. House of a Thousand Corpses felt like, you know, this murder house inspired by some of the films of the 70s, and then we had one that was like criminals on the run doing horrible things. Felt less like horror and more like a thriller. But on future viewings, ended up really enjoying Devil's Rejects. So yeah, I think this one is that same thing. They were expecting one thing from him, and this just wasn't what it was for them.
Yeah, and you mentioned about this movie that your opinion definitely did change about it over time. You started off not really caring too much for it, and then when you watched it again, you liked it. As far as Lords of Salem goes, what does this movie, I guess, mean to you personally as a horror fan and a horror creator?
To me, this one definitely is a love letter that Rob Zombie is writing to the 70s, with where you can see influence from The Exorcist, and late 60s with Rosemary's Baby. It's like he took a lot of those two kinds of films and kind of mixed them together to make this creepy story. Now, I saw something similar, like the first film I think that he'd ever done was House of a Thousand Corpses, and I remember first just seeing bits and pieces of that. I was at this gothic nightclub and they would like find creepy stuff to play. So I'm watching it in reverse on the screen, trying to read subtitles and realizing, wait a minute, maybe this guy can actually make a movie. And when I watched it, I noticed that it felt a lot like I could see this inspiration of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but on acid, with MTV slathered all over top of it. Whereas this one, it's that same kind of feel. Whereas I'm watching it, I've got this very creepy feel that it's like this is his love letter to a couple of different kinds of movies. Because he seems to like a lot of different things, and you could see those influenced in his work. So for me, it was just like, I know exactly where he's coming from with this. I know what he's praising with this and why he's doing this project. Now, it's kind of become not really nostalgic, because I wasn't old enough in the 70s to remember any of that stuff, but I think the term is like anemoia. It's like being nostalgic for a time that you didn't actually live in, just because you've seen a lot of works from around that time or a lot of art from that time, and you become nostalgic for that. And that's what this one brings out. And what's strange is it doesn't even take place in the 70s. It just has a feel that for a while, I remember not realizing it wasn't really a 70s film until I noticed like some cars in the background and computers and other bits of tech. Something about the look and a little bit of the style and the music made me think it was of a different time. Which, you know, watching it another time is ridiculous that I ever even didn't catch on. Like, oh yeah, this is current day.
Yeah, and even some of the decor that was in the lead character's apartment, Heidi, played by Sheri Moon Zombie, was very just kind of out there. She had the a mural. I think the mural that caught my eye just like behind her bed, little like a very like tangent here, but It's of that 1902 silent movie. I don't know, the title's French, but I think it's something called like The Voyage to the Moon.
Yeah.
That iconic shot with the rocket like in the moon's
Yeah.
eye. So it's just like sometimes, so even some of the decorations and the decor are very just kind of almost old.
Yeah, and you had like, and her and like the other characters had like a lot of earth tones, and the film itself had, and this is probably more because of budget than any artistic direction, but a lot more film grain. So everything kept pulling me back. It's kind of like watching something like The Love Witch, where they try to make it look a certain way, but technically other things show you that it's current day as well. I don't think it was intentional in this. It's just the inspiration of the 70s had really come out in the way that he brought it to the screen. And yeah, like I said, the first time, I really did enjoy it. It's just there were some parts that I thought were too slow as we get close to that third act. But then on subsequent viewings, I really didn't have an issue with any of that.
Are slow burn films in general, are they your jam, or are they something that you try to avoid, or are you just like, I like them, but just in very specific circumstances?
Yeah, very specific circumstances. And plus, whatever that slow burn is going towards really needs to pay off to make that slower journey worth it. Because I've seen slow burns on 80-minute movies that just feel like they went on too long and ruined the movie. And I've seen slow burns on something that's 3 hours that it never stuck out. Sometimes those slow burns can work where you're given that time during that slowness to like slowly take everything in. You don't have too much bombarded with you. It's kind of like a breather. So yeah, it depends on, certain situations, certain films, it works fine. I don't avoid them, but I also don't run towards them.
Okay. Now going back to, I briefly mentioned Heidi, but now let's really delve into her character played by Sheri Moon Zombie. I find myself just really drawn to her in this film. She plays the role with just like a very just quiet kind of subtlety that just something about her really draws me in. So what are your thoughts about the character of Heidi? Do you consider her a tragic figure that the events are happening to her and around her? Or do you think that she's this kind of character that they mentioned something I think about fate and destiny? Like, well, okay, her fate was always going to lead her to like something dark, and she's always just been on this dark path.
Yeah, I feel she's definitely a tragic character. As you get to see more about her, like, for one thing, I like seeing her relationships with her coworkers, especially the one played by Jeff Daniel Phillips, and like kind of seeing how she associates with all of them, what her life is like, how she knows her neighbors and everything. But she was really doing well. She was doing well up until this point. She had a good job, good relationships. She was staying clean, as we got to see that she is in recovery. But it seems like her being an addict somehow was an easy way to break her down for them to get through to her, that no matter what, she was going to be susceptible to something because she's already on a daily struggle. Especially the fact that she's still going to group, she's still going to therapy, she's still working to try to stay clean. But I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. I think that this is probably one of my favorite roles of hers, just because of the way that character was. You really, in my opinion at least, I really connected with her and thought that the actress did a great job bringing that to the screen. Like I said, I love those relationships and her work. The whole scene of her and Jeff Daniel Phillips' character back at her apartment, I just loved just that scene of them just hanging out and, playing music and chowing down and drinking, and it was just whatever.
What I don't understand about Sheri Moon Zombie is the flack that she and Rob Zombie always get. So it's like, oh, you're just casting your wife like again in your film. But like, what do you think about the flack that she gets? And you mentioned about how you thought that she did in the role, but do you think that she gets the credit that she deserves?
I don't think well, especially for this role, I don't think she gets the credit that she deserves. I understand with House of a Thousand Corpses, her character is this real caricature who's very loud, very annoying. She's trying to be this weird mix of annoying and sexy at the same time, and people being both turned on and repelled by her and just not wanting to see her in something again. But then when they know that they're married, I think there's like a bit of jealousy that she, gets to land a role like this easily. But if I was in Rob Zombie's position, if I worked with somebody where it's a family or friend or an actor who I got to know through another production, if I liked working with them and I liked what they brought to the production, I'm going to bring them back. I mean,
exactly.
We even hear the same thing with Mike Flanagan putting his wife in things. I'm like, well, yeah, and he also
Oh,
puts Henry Thomas in a bunch of stuff. I mean, he puts everybody that he's worked with. It's like creating a troupe. Now, like I said, I could see people not liking her in one role, but for this role, I really don't think that she got enough credit for it because she didn't play a caricature. She didn't have to swell anything up. She just had to really get down to like a root of herself. She's probably known people who were addicts, or maybe she was one herself. I haven't really read into her personal life, but she really seemed to put something personal and emotional about herself into this role. When you look at the way that her character starts out versus when she gets to that point, I know there's a scene where Jeff Daniel Phillips is standing out in this dock and he's calling her up, trying to get in touch with her, trying to get some time with her, just seeing how completely drained and broken down she is as she's being pulled apart spiritually. It was this great transformation, and I don't understand why she isn't at least not getting flack. I mean, if somebody didn't like the movie, of course they're not going to praise her, but at least to not give her some flack for being cast in the first place.
that's a really good point. If I was directing a movie and I wanted to cast a member of my family because I thought that they were going to bring something to the role, I would do it. It's just like, you know what, people, you would do the exact same thing if you were in that kind of position.
And that's why, like, so I got to meet Jeff Daniel Phillips about 2 years ago at a convention, and I got to, luckily tell him as much that I thought that not only did she do great in the film with him, but the chemistry that he had with her was really amazing. I thought they were perfect together, and even in that Monsters movie, which is one that initially I turned off after 15 minutes. I was more of an Addams Family person, and I wasn't ready for how crazy the Monsters was. But then I met Daniel Roebuck at a convention, and he was so freaking nice. I'm like, all right, I have to give this movie another try. And I went in with a different point of view, enjoyed it for being like this crazy, almost hocus pocus kind of colorized nonsense. But I could see that same thing with their chemistry on screen there. It was definitely one of the most interesting interactions I had with an actor at one of these conventions. He was talking with Sean Hatose, who I don't really know much about his work, except he was one of the kids from the faculty. He played one of the football players. And so I'm talking with Jeff Daniel Phillips about some of the women he was in this movie with. Like, how did you not just geek out being around like Dee Wallace or Meg Foster, any of them? And then we're having to explain to Sean Atosi who they are because he's not really big in the horror community. He was there because of the faculty, but he's mainly been doing other work. And then I realized we're talking with this celebrity like we're going to fill him in on stuff, and I'm not seeing him as Jeff Daniel Phillips. He's just some other horror fan because we're talking about older works and talking about Rocky Horror Picture Show because of like some of the actresses in that. And it was just kind of funny because I start to just want to tell them, hey, you did a great job in this movie. Your chemistry with her was great. I loved it. To okay, we have to educate this fellow guest here on some of the works and why people are here and what they're going to talk to you about. And then he leaked it out to me. He's like, oh, by the way, I just re-signed a deal with Geico, so the caveman's coming back. I was like, oh, I got some insider info on that. This is about a month before those ads started running again.
It's nice. I love it when you can just talk to people that have been in horror movies, and good portion of the time it just leads into conversations where you're just like old friends.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. That's a nice little aside there. That's That's like whatever they say, like, don't meet your heroes or don't meet the people that you've like enjoyed in these movies, but anybody that I've met so far in the horror community just been super, super nice.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Well, we've mentioned something about the witches in this film, and the witches are a cause of a lot of the problems, if not 100% of the problems in this movie. Witches tend to be portrayed just very, like, either kitty, or something that's like in Hocus Pocus.
Right.
These witches are, they're different. But what do you feel makes them so different than, like, the usual portrayal of witches?
I think a lot of the usual portrayal was more about playing off the misunderstandings. So, for instance, you can look at something like The Craft. It's meant for teenagers, that's fine, but it's really leaning more towards into the spirituality behind it and just one of them getting corrupted by power. Or you look at the Hocus Pocus side of it, where you get into, like, the real Halloween side. It's more fun. They're doing these spells. They're technically evil, but it's not out of control. But this one seemed to go in a route that I don't recall seeing as often, where all of the fears that like these Puritans would have about witchcraft, it's if every single thing that they said was true. Like, they are worshiping the devil, they are going to bring about destruction and death, and there's going to be sacrifices and all this horrible stuff. Having that shown as if everything they were saying was actually happening by these witches, that made it really scary. I've always found anything religious or supernatural more frightening in a horror film, because if you have a suspension of disbelief, whether you believe in that religion or not, or that, any of those sides of it, you can't outrun that. It's going to get you no matter what. So them leaning into that was really creepy and really dark, and I loved the fact that they made them out to be the evil hags that they were spoken about back then. They weren't these sexy witches. They were gross and dirty, and they're like, please just take a shower for a week and then cover yourself and stay home. They looked horrible. They looked corrupted by evil, and so into just bringing about this destruction, bringing about this birth, that everything else fell the wayside, and they looked more like monsters than women. I hadn't really seen that often, if ever.
Yeah, no, I don't know if this was Rob Zombie's intention, especially the three women in Heidi's apartment building, of course, like they're witches. And I got to thinking, like, this reminds me so much of like the three witches in Macbeth. That's that's what my mind like immediately went to, especially with the one's talk of Megan. I think the character's name is Megan. Like her talk of destiny and fate. It's just like that's what the witches in Macbeth like talked about. So I'm beginning to think that was intentional. If that's what my mind just immediately went to, was three hags like in Macbeth, but they were actually like the cleanest and most well-dressed witches out of all of them.
Yeah, because they definitely came across more as alluring and welcoming and as tricksters, that they're going to invite her in for tea or invite themselves over with the tea cup and everything. And that's one of the things I spoke with Chef Daniel Phillips about. I was like, how did you not just fall in love with all three of them when working on the movie? Like, how did you stay professional? But yeah, so it was interesting to see, like, it started this way, dirty and evil. We're bringing it about. It didn't work out. And now we have to slowly find a way to bring about this birth. So the women are going to have to not be repellent. They're going to have to be tricksters. It's one of the things that when people talk about different translations within, the Bible, and they talk about representations of Satan. And it's always like this evil, disgusting looking thing, when actually it's like the most beautiful. Lucifer is the most beautiful and vibrant thing, because it's going to tempt you. And so it was interesting seeing the witches go that route. Like, well, we're going to have to make them these welcoming, loving neighbors who have her back, or at least, have her back for the sake of their own means, for their own gain. But yeah, I really liked what he did with that one.
Yeah, because if those three witches were all dirty and nasty and gross, like any sane person would be like, oh my god, no, I don't want to come over for tea.
It'd be like when they see that log file in Event Horizon. You could say, we're leaving.
We're leaving. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm so glad you brought that line up, because that has to be like my favorite line in any horror movie ever, because it's just so grounded and realistic.
Well, I think of that sometimes when I open up social media and it's one of those days that it's just nothing but the horrors of the world. I'm like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'll try again tomorrow.
Goodbye. I'm channeling my inner Lawrence Fishburne captain character and getting the hell out of here.
Exactly.
We mentioned very briefly a little bit just about how wild things get in this movie, and with Rob Zombie, the visuals just like are usually over the top, and in this movie it is no exception, but in a different way, like a more religious kind of iconography way. We've got goats. We've got these weird kind of nuns and priests where you can't really see their faces. There's all sorts of wild hallucination stuff going on. Weird, surrealistic, almost nightmare sequences. And it was pretty freaky. I enjoy that kind of stuff, but is that up your alley? Do you like kind of dreamlike, surrealist scares, or do you prefer your scares to be oftentimes like a bit more grounded?
Those scares always work better for me, because like I said, it's one of those things you can't just escape. You don't even know what's real or not. And the way that he used that within this film, it's like once things start moving through and it starts to slow down a little bit and you're wondering what else is he going to do with it, then he throws that at you to say, okay, well, things are going to get weird now, and it kind of like peaks at attention. And that's something that got the attention back through some of those slow spots to see, I need to see where the heck this is going now. Because this is one of the most strange, most artistic scenes that I've ever seen him film, plus the way that the music was used. And then when you see that little person with the umbilical thing, I'm just glad I wasn't eating pasta at the time. And I was ready to see where it ended, Like, I'm ready to see what that little thing is, because if that's how Mini-Me was born, I don't know. That was horrible.
God, that was
Yeah.
disgusting. And it's kind of funny, the juxtaposition where, because they did a flashback to where the witches were doing this ritual, and this cute little baby was born, and they're just like, ew, gross. This is nasty. And then, like, this evil, nasty, like, thing is born. They're like, oh, look at how precious this is.
Like, that's a representation of what we wanted, so we find that beautiful. But the regular, pure, normal baby, that's disgusting.
Yeah, ew, gross. So, surrealist kind of horror and scares, for me personally, it's very tricky to get right.
Right.
I think oftentimes when they're used, it's almost, it doesn't, I'm gonna feel weird even saying this because surrealism is not going to, it doesn't make sense anyway, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense at times, and especially if you're going to use it and just like, I don't even really want to say the wrong way. Maybe a better way to word it is just like not in the way that you intended. And I felt that Rob Zombie was very intentional in the way that he used these dreamlike surrealist horror sequences, because like you mentioned, like it's slow, like when's this going to pick up again, then some freaky will pop into view, like the picture bleeding on the wall, or the witch that's in the Heidi's apartment. It almost looked like she was part of the scenery. That was freaking freaky as hell.
Yeah, that the surreal stuff, I mean, you know, I just rewatched all of Twin Peaks earlier this year after the passing of David Lynch. So that kind of, that's really been on my mind, where I think sometimes with this surreal imagery, one of the things I try to keep in mind is that they're not necessarily telling me info for a story and what's going to happen plot-wise as much as they want to make me feel a certain thing. So with this, in this case, it felt like we're laying out the entire story. It's starting to lull now because there's not much else you can do except wrap it up at the end, and you need more time. Then this is brought up to make that feeling happen before you launch into the end. And I thought it was a cool way to do it. And I thought, you know, it's from his years of being in music videos and stuff too. It's just, well, what can we throw together that's going to be really cool for this? That's going to invoke that feeling.
Okay, so that's an interesting, I've never heard it described quite that way before. Like, when you approach surrealism, you approach it more from a sense of, how does this director want me to feel? What emotions are they trying to invoke in me, rather than, this is a straight up scare and plot point.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that I noticed when I watched Eraserhead for the first time about a year and a half or 2 years ago. I did a video sometime for my channel about it, and I remember having a hard time while watching it, staying on track with what exactly is happening in the storyline, but then realizing that it made me feel certain things about being locked down and having claustrophobia and feeling dread and feeling confusion. And I felt like, well, maybe that's all that they wanted me to do, was to feel that first, and then this loose storyline underneath that. So for a scene like that, feel this, and we're just having this loose thing tying to what's going to bring us to the end of this film.
Along with the visuals in this film, which are really freaking great, sound also plays a huge part in any movie, but in particularly horror movies. So let's talk about the sound a little bit. So a lot of this freaky kind of musical sound kicks off whenever Heidi receives this mysterious vinyl record in this wooden box, and it's from a group called the Lords. And this vinyl is eerie. It's freaky and it's eerie, and I think you mentioned something about just kind of the droning sound of it, like throughout. So how do you think that Rob Zombie uses sound in this film? Not just with that one song on the record, but just overall in this film to kind of get in your head and mess with it a little bit.
Well, I feel like with the score and the way that that's designed, you know, like we mentioned, we got the drone creepiness kind of lulling you to this little nightmarish sleep in a way, and then he'll bring in the more hardcore, like, metal sound to punctuate that. Kind of like, we're going to lull you into this nightmare, we're going to pop you awake for a moment, we're going to lull you back in, we're going to pop you in again. And the fact that that record itself has what sounds like a mix between that. It sounds like it could be from some experimental metal band, just trying some new stuff. And I think that what's interesting was because of the way that it came across like that, it also sounded very hypnotic. So you could see how it would have all these women just stop in their tracks and kind of tune into this thing that's trying to get through to them. And I mean, it was interesting because sometimes the score and the actual songs selected are very, very separate. But this one, it seemed like he really had it in mind. Like even when they're hanging out at the apartment at the beginning, what music they want to put on that really makes you feel comfortable. And they're going to have this slow drone. And then here's the record that's going to be just crazy and experimental. And then here's some more drone. And then here is, some louder pops that are going to just keep waking you up. It's kind of like, I could almost feel it like just at like the back of my head. Like one way that I describe it is, if you're driving down the freeway and you roll down just the back windows of the car and it starts pulling in the air and you get that little air pressure change. It feels like it was doing that to everything, to just like shake me through these scenes.
Ooh, yeah. When I think about this music, it just felt like really uneasy. This kind of watching this, I don't even really know how to describe it. I think the way that you described it was just really good. It pulls you into this nightmare because I made a comment or a note saying that there's not really a whole lot of rock music in this movie.
Right.
Because I'm used to whenever I think Rob Zombie, it's like rock, metal, rock. This was just like you said, little pops.
Yeah,
pop.
little
Like,
punctuation
okay, wake
here
up.
and there.
Yeah, wake up from this nightmare. Okay, we're lulling you back to sleep. Okay, wake up.
Yeah.
And I think the music kind of in this movie also complements the kind of slow burn that this movie has. But unfortunately, that tends to be, whenever I looked into reviews of that, not the music, but the slow burn. One of people's biggest complaints, just like about this film, is how slow it is. And I feel that, me personally, I feel that the slow burn works in this movie's favor, but for newer horror fans, maybe not so much. So let me ask you this: if someone was coming into horror brand new, they're like, I want to start off with Rob Zombie in one of his movies, would you recommend this particular movie for them to start off with, or no?
Definitely not. I would say to start with House of a Thousand Corpses and just go through that Firefly trilogy, because you'll see different directing styles of his. But before watching a movie like this, I would say to rewatch Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and maybe The Omen. Then go into a movie like this one. So you could see what, because especially if they're new to horror and they haven't seen those films or they haven't seen them in a long time, to understand the pacing of those films. Like I've heard people talk about The Exorcist as being really boring because it does have a lot of slow spots, but when it hits hard. But some people, the slow spots stick out too much. They never did for me, because I always thought those slow spots were the ones I was the most interested in whenever I would rewatch it, because so much of the more explosive, literally the pea soup explosive parts of it stick in my head more, that when I rewatch it, those slow spots, I get more from the story that I completely forgot. But it does have that similar pacing where it's slow. It's about the single mother, and she's working as an actress, and her daughter's getting sick, and is going to say, and then you have being possessed, and all that stuff happens. And I feel like if they understand The Exorcist and The Omen and Rosemary's Baby, which Rosemary's Baby, it's just so long. It's kind of long, in my opinion, for a horror film. It does have some of that droning because we're slowly following her through a pregnancy, seeing her lose body autonomy and rights and decisions over her own body. To learn that pacing, so that way when you watch something like this, you won't be as turned off. If you've been watching a lot of newer stuff, especially like you mentioned earlier, if you loved House of a Thousand Corpses and then you watch this, you're not going to like this one. But I would say if you're watching it and you realize it's starting to get slow, even if you're feeling that a little bit before that surreal nightmare scene, to just give it a few more minutes, know that it's going to turn around towards the end and wrap it up in a way that you're going to feel worn out because it's just thrown so much at you.
Yeah.
But overall, you'll end up enjoying it. You just need to have a little bit of patience. And if you just think it's so-so, a year later, try watching it again. You may end up changing your opinion on it by then.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. For any kind of movie that is a slow burn, I wouldn't recommend as a newer horror fan, going straight into the stuff that's a slow burn. I always make it a joke I always have a joke that, I've got to find an excuse to mention John Carpenter at least once per podcast episode. I finally got it. All right, so if I was going to recommend a John Carpenter film, I would not recommend someone who start off with, I wouldn't even recommend they start off with Halloween.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend they start off with Prince of Darkness. Definitely not. Probably my go-to is just I'd be like, watch The Thing.
Yeah.
It's it's got enough kind of tension to go along with that build-up that is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. And you
Yeah.
got like a little Blair thing like back there. So that's also just why I brought it up.
Yeah, because that's one of those things that I always felt I didn't really watch Halloween until sometime within the last 20 years. It was not a franchise I was up on when I was a kid. I was all about Freddy and Jason. So when I first watched it, having seen, 2 decades, 3 decades worth of horror films, I thought it was really slow and lacked a huge climax. It took me a few views to get into it. But I've had other films of his that I felt dragged too much, and then when I rewatched them, sometimes years later, I enjoyed, like In the Mouth of Madness. Didn't enjoy it. Years later, I caught it on TV and like a scene from it, so I decided to rewatch it, thinking more of like a Lovecraftian inspiration, and I did not mind any of the slow spots in that. Prince of Darkness, somehow I always liked Prince of Darkness. I don't know what it was about it, but even though it's kind of dated now since it talks about the end of the world in the year 1999. But yeah, we're kind of past that now. But yeah, I think sometimes it's difficult when you're recommending a director to not be able to go for what might be one of your favorites or might be one of their most popular.
Yeah.
Like, would you recommend somebody check out Jaws to understand Spielberg? It's like, or The Duel? Probably not. But maybe not even Close Encounters. You might start with something a little bit bigger and slowly work around to those kinds of things.
Jurassic Park. That's what I'd recommend to
Jurassic
Spielberg.
Park has just enough ups and downs throughout it as you're learning, action, learning, action. It punctuates it more, where Jaws is one of those slow burns. You have, beach attack, another beach attack, slowly finding, and then you get something big,
Yeah.
It takes a while. You go 45 minutes without seeing the shark. But that works out that way in that film. But if somebody had never seen his films, I don't know if they would like that the first time. Especially if they're used to faster TV shows and TikTok videos, if their attention span isn't quite there.
Yeah. Unless you're already a fan of creature features.
Yeah.
Which tend to have kind of slower build-ups anyway. So if you've seen a lot of creature features, then the first thing you come into Spielberg's is Jaws. Then I could say that for sure. So as far as Rob Zombie's filmography, I can't even name all the films he's done like off the top of my head, but where do you think that Lords of Salem fits into his overall filmography? Do you think it's a film that's just very criminally underrated? Do you think that it's a masterpiece? Like, what's your take on it?
I think it's definitely underrated. I think because of when it came out, maybe it just wasn't the right time. People didn't have the right expectations. I do think it's very underrated, but it's also very different. I think it's hard to even judge his films, like to even rank them, because it depends on what you're in the mood for. Even within the Firefly trilogy, things they feel like three completely different kinds of movies. Even Halloween 1 and 2 feel so different from each other that
they do.
Some love this depth into what the evil is. Some just want, Michael Myers to be evil. The second one starts working in some just strangeness to it, and kind of goes on a bit. Some absolutely hate it. Some really think it's great. And with Lords of Salem, I think that for when it came out, maybe people were expecting something different. For me, I think it's an underrated gem that if somebody saw it way back and didn't enjoy it, I think they should give it another try. I would put this I'd have to put it even with House of a Thousand Corpses, just because it's so different. I can't judge one over the other, because I might be in the mood for, Crazy Family, and I'll put House of a Thousand Corpses up top. Or I may be wanting to see the end of the world, and I'll put Lords of Salem up top. And of course, with the Munsters, that's just a completely different thing. That's a family fun one. That's a family fun movie. You don't, so for some people, if they don't want that family fun, if they never not like stuff like Hocus Pocus or Nightmare Before Christmas or any of the Disney kind of stuff, they're going to absolutely hate the Munsters. But somebody else might put it as tops because it's the most wildly colorful and a lot of fun. But yeah, I would say this is definitely an underrated gem. I think he put a lot of great work into it. The inspiration really sticks out, but really feels like its own thing at the same time.
And I'm not like the biggest, I'm not like a hardcore Rob Zombie fan. Like, I've seen a lot of his stuff, and it's like, oh, well, this is interesting. This is nice. And I don't really know how people feel just in general in the horror community about this particular movie, The Lords of Salem, other than the fact that that's a bit of a slow burn. I mean, that's really all I could find about it, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a huge hardcore Rob Zombie fan, but if you are, What have you like heard from people like about this film? Like,
Yeah.
do they also consider it underrated? Do they consider it like a cult classic? It's just like, what's the
Right.
buzz? Have you heard
Like
any buzz?
whenever I find somebody who likes this movie, I'm actually kind of surprised because the ones who
Oh,
do like it end up saying, "Well, I don't understand the hate. Like I loved it for all these things." But usually the people who really enjoyed it seem to also really enjoy a lot of stuff where the inspiration came from. So
like the you
the
mentioned films like
70s and
Rosemary's
late
Baby, The
60s, yeah.
Exorcist.
So if they love those movies, I think those are the people who end up really liking this one. If somebody's either not familiar with those or they never really cared for that older style, which I never fault somebody for not caring for an older horror film. If
Right,
it's not
right.
in what you watch, then you don't like it, you know? So if somebody likes those older films, those are the only ones that I see who end up really liking this one, it seems like.
All right, all right. It's kind of strange to me that someone like I guess me personally, because my tastes in horror are all over the place. I have
Mm.
a favorite subgenre, but I'm going to just like I like films like this. I like films like slashers, and so it's kind of strange to me that someone I guess would only stay in one lane, one horror subgenre, and that's really all they ever watch. But I mean, if it's what they like, it's what they like.
Oh yeah, exactly. Again, there's plenty to choose from. You know, I mean, the biggest problem with horror these days is that the market is saturated. There's
Yeah.
like 12 new movies every week. You know,
Yep.
so you can't
You.
keep up with them all. There's more to choose from. I come across stuff years later that I either never got around to or never heard of. I
Yeah.
just watched all the Hatchet movies for the first time in October. I'd never seen any of them. And I'm like just late to the party, like, hey guys, you guys like this? Yeah, it's 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. I forgot about it, you know.
Wow, yeah, the Hatchet ones have been on my list for a while now and haven't gotten around to them yet. But like you said, the problem is that our market's oversaturated. It's
Yeah.
like we are spoiled for choice whenever it comes to just like
Yeah.
what. And I consider it, I guess, too, a good thing, but then also a bad thing because it takes me forever to get something sometimes.
Yeah, there's been a lot that I'll just try to get around to watching, and it'll sit there in a queue for so long that then I go in there and it's gone. You know, that show
Yeah.
Holliston that was on like 10 or 12 years ago, it
Oh.
was sitting in my queue in Shudder for 5 years or something, because Shudder had gotten the rights for a while. They were going to do a third season, and by the time I, watched the Hatchet movies, and then another 2 or 3 months later, I was like, oh, I should finally get around to watching Holliston because, Adam Green had made all the stuff. And it wasn't there, and it wasn't streaming anywhere. It was only digital purchase, so I just had to bite the bullet and just buy the Blu-ray, hoping that I liked it. And luckily I did, but again, I was so late to it. And it's even like that with some of these 70s films that I've been watching where I'm like, I know I saw Rosemary's Baby a long time ago, but by the time I actually sat down to take it in, I'd remember nothing of it.
Oh.
So I think there'll always be room for revisiting those classics, but I understand when people don't because there's so much new stuff.
I know. And hashtag physical media. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
I think that we, as another kind of tangent here, we as a horror community need to be supporting physical media because streaming's nice, it's convenient, but
Right.
we're in a sense we're almost just like we're renting it as opposed to if we like it just straight out buying it. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
physical media support it.
Yeah, that's why I go to those used places. I joke that, like at Viper Video, I say that I picked up the substance for $90 because I ended up leaving with a bunch of other things too. I went in there for one
Right.
movie,
Yeah.
and I've even walked in. It became a joke. I'm like, I'm just here to pick up my pre-order of the substance. I'm just gonna look around, and I'm leaving with 6 other movies.
Yeah, I've got like my list of movies like on my phone, just like, okay, these are the movies that I need to look up and buy a good mix of old stuff and new stuff. Like someone was surprised that I actually got a physical copy of Prey that
Yeah.
was because that movie is only on Hulu, and it's just like, yeah, like I'm surprised too. Streaming services
Yeah.
really don't put out like physical.
Yeah, that one briefly
releases.
had a release, and I was lucky enough to get one, but I still haven't gotten one for the latest Hellraiser. I think that's only in the UK. There hasn't
Yeah.
been anything for Barbarian anywhere unless it's like a bootleg. But yeah, it's and some of these like if you have a place like a local place that will still sell physical media, just reaching out to them and giving them a list saying this is what I'm looking to buy, can you give me some quotes? So for instance, with the place by me, Viper Video, I gave them a list and they're like, well, we have these prices for this price for 4K. We've got a couple of these ones used for this price. And then he just says, all right, well, we've got everything, but this one's going to take another day or whatever. I can come in, get them whenever, and leave there with a big stack. It's kind of like the stack of books to read. You get to that point where it's like, well, there's a stack of movies I bought. A lot of these I've already seen, and I'm just collecting, so I'm not in a rush to get around to them. It's like I'd finally gotten around to watching that old slasher, The Prowler. I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to own it. Found it for $11 used, but I just watched it, so it's going to sit there in the stack for like 6 months before I get around to it.
This physical media is just very, very neat, and that's all I can say about it.
I've definitely got a problem because I think I'm up over 850 movies now, so I should probably slow down.
You're not even. I've talked to people on this show that have even more movies than you do. I think one person I talked to had like 3,500 or something. It was like a little over. So just like you're definitely on the lower end of the spectrum as far as.
And if anybody watching doesn't understand why we'd be so wrapped up in physical media, like besides the personal collection, check out the documentary. I think it's on Tubi called VHS Massacre and VHS Massacre 2, because it talks about the importance of the VHS rental market and what that did for filmmaking and especially for indie films and indie horror.
Yes.
And then on the sequel, it goes into a little bit more about when some of that starts shutting down and we start losing even DVD rentals and DVD purchases, what happens. It definitely piqued my interest too. I've been holding back on purchasing stuff for years, and then ever since watching that about I think it was 2 years ago, that's been what like my last 200 movies have been. It's just since then, because anytime I see something used, I'm like, well, okay, it's $5. If I want to watch it more than once, it'll be worth it, because a rental would be $4 anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And even purchasing it digitally, it's no guarantee that it's going to be in your library, because I've heard Sony like getting rid of just like a lot of movies and games and stuff like that people had purchased. So
yeah, the fine print is that you're paying for a permanent edition of rental, but that it could be taken away if they lose the rights. It even happens with digital books. I remember when, I think it's some classic like 1984 or something, the digital rights had just expired for a month, so people who had it through Amazon's Kindle, it just disappeared from their devices until they fixed to have the rights to still provide that digital purchase, which is kind of weird because I thought it was a public commons book by that point.
Yeah, me too.
But just to be able to provide it, they still need something behind that. But I don't know, that's another one of those tangents that I could go on and on about physical media and it looking a bit better than streaming too, and I don't need internet to watch this. I have a ultraviolet version. The code on it still worked, but I've got the Blu-ray and the DVD, so I'm good anytime I want to watch it.
And if you take good care of your physical media, like I had my copy of Shaun of the Dead, for instance, for over 20 years, you take care of it, it's going to last you for a very, very long time, and you'll always have it, and you don't have to, like, experience the crushing disappointment if you go to your favorite streaming service and your movie's not there that you want to watch, like, oh man, it's like, you could just go to your shelf and get it out.
And there's been talk about discs going bad, and I've got this whole conspiracy. It's just from companies not wanting people to buy discs anymore. They want to control the rentals. And the reason I say this is that out of all the DVDs that I bought over the years, ever since 97, I've had 2 of them stop working ever. They talk about laser rot, which was something that used to happen with laser discs rarely, because laser discs, for those who don't know, are basically 2 vinyl record size CDs that are glued back to back together. So what would happen is you get like half the movie on one side, half on the other. The glue that held the 2 discs together would start to deteriorate. So then when people would go to play it, it wouldn't play right. And that's what laser rot was. Now they're talking about it happening with DVD and Blu-ray, like it's such a common thing that you better just stream it. 2 discs out of over 1,000, I think we're safe.
Yeah, I think I've had the exact same amount, like, not work for me. One was Finding Nemo, and which isn't even a horror movie, and the other one was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning. Any disc I bought of it, even if it's like been a brand new one, refuses to play for me. So yeah, I'd say 2 out of like all the movies I had.
I had the original release of Apollo 13 just stopped working one day. and the original release of Boogie Nights from back in 97 or 98. And I had to keep it because it was the first celebrity I met when I lived in LA was a director, and so he autographed it. So I have an autographed, damaged disc sitting next to my old DVD copy of The Thing that was autographed too.
Well, at least you got it autographed.
Hey, yeah.
We are to the portion of Retro Horror School Talks I like to call our what if scenario, because I'm very big on just like what ifs and like what if this happened or what if that happened or how would I or characters handle this situation. So here is the what if for this movie. So what if Heidi had destroyed the record before ever playing it? So she got this record. What if she decided, like, I'm not going to play this. This is just, like, weird. Like, do you think that she could have escaped the fate laid out for her? Or do you think that she was always just destined to be, like, the vessel of the
I think it would have come to her on Spotify. Somehow it still would have come to her. Because one of the things I didn't pay attention to, I'd have to look into it, was, is it that they specifically needed her, or did they need somebody who was in line genetically? Because it could be that they were trying and failing, and now they're up to her. Oh. Where if she had a daughter one day, that could be another potential for that daughter, or without having daughter, that's the last chance they're going to have. I think because of her family history and her addiction history, they would have found a way to get through to her. They've been planting the seed for a while with that. I think she was always doomed somehow for it to be either in her destiny or that she would have unalived herself or something to get away from it, to stop it.
Yeah, that would have been bleak.
Would have been like something out of, well, I don't want to mention a movie since it was like part of the ending, but there was a movie where at the end somebody just decides to take that step and it kind of reverses back to the beginning of the movie like it was all a nightmare, but you know that they're gonna try again.
Now we're to the portion that I like to call the retro lightning round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to answer them.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a threat. You're going to answer these questions.
All right.
And you can just give the first answer that pops in your head and we move on, or you can expand your answer as much as you want to.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. First question. The scariest visual in this movie?
I would say the woman who is in either her kitchen or bathroom, like standing up on a counter just in the corner. It goes by so quick. I didn't even notice it the first 2 times that I saw the movie. Somehow I blinked and didn't notice that. That one freaked me out.
Yeah. She's also like ends up in the bathroom. Like she's in Heidi's bathroom. It's just like wait.
Boom, boom. And then I think at some point she's in the bedroom as well. When like it just changes and she's like in the corner. Yep. That's the scariest, is that whoever that witch is.
Yeah, I had to rewind it back. It's like, wait, did I just see that? So I rewound it again. Exactly. It's like, yep, I sure did see that.
Yep.
Like, would you consider... Okay, next question. Would you consider Heidi a final girl? Because you do kind of see her at the end. Or do you consider her more of a fallen one?
I think she's a fallen one because she's no longer the self that she was at the beginning. She's gone the dark side, whether she's been corrupted and turned into that or has chosen to just give into that.
Okay. Next question. Do you think this film could exist without the kind of heavy metal grungy vibe undertones that it has to it?
Yeah, I think any kind of music could be used, but imagine this being done with some sort of like a darker, really heavy bass hip hop to it, because that heavy wavelength, that bass can really drive deep into somebody's head and heart, and I could see that kind of music being almost just as successfully used. You know, it can, like anything that's going to really drive into somebody, whether it's loud blaring metal and grunge and like that crazy sound, or some like really deep bass penetrating into somebody's skull. I think it could happen.
Right.
Although I like the way that this one was done.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think any other horror director could have pulled this movie off? And if so, how?
So, I hate to always bring him up because there are a lot more directors than him, but I think John Carpenter could, because of the way that he deals with slowness and slow creepiness and mystery. You look at the mystery of The Thing, the mystery of They Live, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness. I mean, he's really good at bringing this mystery in, the slow creepiness, the coldness of The Thing, like everything. I think he could do that. But I would love to see a remake to turn it into a comedy directed by Adam Green because of what he did with those Hatchet movies. I think he could really do something. And that one, and one that he did called Digging Up the Marrow, when he throws in these bits of comedies. To see him do what most, even myself, would consider him completely destroying this movie, but it would be so much fun to watch that destruction, just doing something wildly crazy and very different with the storyline.
So you're going two different directions today.
Yeah,
One just like
one doing it well and one just burning it to the ground in the most fun way possible.
Alright, then the last and final question. There seems to be a trend of just like, oh, let's turn these movies into TV shows. So, do you think that Lords of Salem, or The Lords of Salem, could translate into a TV show or a limited series, or no?
I think it could, as long as they really keep it limited and not try to build off the success and do another, like a sequel storyline for it. If they did it in 4 to 5 episodes at most, I would think you would still need to kind of split it up. We have our intro, build it out, we get our middle section there, and then slowly bring us in towards the end, over 5 episodes maybe. I think one of the problems is that sometimes that works very successfully and they immediately want to do another season. I feel like I'm the only one who didn't want a sequel to the show Hysteria. I liked how it went. I was good with it. So when they said they canceled it, I'm like, what? That's fine for me.
Yeah.
I think a movie like this could be done that same way, where we just need to get to that same ending, do it in 4 or 5 episodes, be done with it. We could have a little bit more depth with some of those characters. Because if we have the time to build them out more, I mean, you look at already what we did with Sheri Moon Zombie and Jeff Daniel Phillips, really great chemistry, but imagine 4 hours, 5 hours worth of that building, plus other stuff with the roommates, with the researcher and his wife. I think we could have gotten a lot more. We could have gotten a lot more out of Ken Foray, like just more depth into him and his home life and him working there. Series can be good for some more depth, just when they go on too long, they run the concept into the ground. 4 or 5 episodes, we're good.
Yeah, they tried to drag it on for 8 or 10, that'd be like, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah, that's
Stop
enough.
it now.
4 or 5 weeks, preferably around October. We don't need to drop them all and binge it in one weekend and make it drag. We just need every week, next installment. Halloween, we see the end, done.
I like that. I like that release schedule.
Yeah.
All right, well, as they say, all good things must come to an end. Once again, CaturdayNite, also known as Scott,
Yep.
Thank you so very much for coming on and talking The Lords of Salem with me. This really trippy, freaky-deaky film.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, for sure. I'm glad that I got to bring this film to somebody else who ended up enjoying it.
And why don't you tell everybody out there who may be on the fence about watching it, they're kind of teetering like, well, should I? Give them your sales pitch as to why they should give this one a shot.
I would say definitely give this one a shot if you've seen and enjoyed some of the older works such as Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, The Omen, any older like 70s, late 60s kind of stuff. There will be a slow burn, so just prepare for that. There's a lot of mystery going on. What you're going to get with that is some really interesting characters, some of them having some really great chemistry. We're going to have this slow creep factor mystery building up that's going to really take you on this surreal trip. You're not necessarily going to feel good at the end of this one, but the horror movies that make you feel a bit uneasy at the end, those ones are worth checking out. Just don't watch it right before bedtime.
Yeah, definitely. I'm probably one of the rare few that can't watch a horror movie right before bedtime and sleep like a baby.
Exactly.
And now, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on this big wide world of the internet, and anything that you've got upcoming, like for your content that you want people to keep an eye out for?
So my channel is just youtube.com/CaturdayNite. Basically the channel, like I said, I've got about 380 videos, different film recommendations. There are more recommendations than reviews. It's just stuff I liked for whatever reason. Maybe you will too. Most of them are non-spoiler. If I put any spoilers in, I put a warning to let people know when to turn it off. And then if they want to see the movie, watch it, come back and pick up where they left off. And some of what I've been working on recently, I just posted a short film from a local filmmaker here in Tampa named Angelina Phoenix, from A Phoenix Films, called Cult Classic. I had permission to put the entire film up there, so if you like seeing the unpolished new version of filmmaking, head on over to my channel to check that one out. It's about 20 minutes long. I've also been working my way through rewatching some of the Romero zombie films. A while back, I had revisited Night of the Living Dead via Elvira's presentation on the movie Macabre that she did in 2010 when she tried to bring, that series back. But then I went ahead and did the original Dawn of the Dead, which I hadn't seen in so long. I'd forgotten most of it. And just yesterday I posted for Day of the Dead, and I'm working my way through that. Most of my stuff, especially recently, had been 80s based, most of it being horror, or an 80s one that I hadn't really heard about in a while that I revisit to see if it's any good. But I am going to be branching out, putting up a little bit more, so definitely come by, check it out. It might just give you an idea of what to check out that weekend.
And I'll make sure to have all the links to everything that you do in the description below.
Thank you very much.